What's happening, everybody? This is Ryan here for the Scale Up Show. I have Alex Atzberger, who is the CEO of Optimizely, and we are on for part two to talk about some of the things that his company is doing. Specifically, they grew from 100 million to 400 million. We talked about that on the last episode. If you didn't listen to it, great story. It talks about the hardest emotional challenge, the most important decision he made on how to grow a company from 100 million to 400 million in literally only 4 years. So now what we're going to do is get more deep on the AI side, both on the people and the product. So Alex, welcome. Happy to have you back, man.
Ryan, it's great to be back. Thanks so much.
And I did much better on my intro for the second time around, right? I should have just re-recorded the botched intro that I originally gave. I went too long. Okay. So for those of you who don't know, just to give a quick recap or jumping off, Optimizely is 400 million now. They're 100 million basically 4 years ago. They're on pace to grow another 400 to 600 million to get to that $1 billion level like Dr. Evil always talks about. And so let's talk about AI, right? One of the most loved topics that I have for this show. Some people love it. Some people are getting burnt out on it. I think it's mind-blowing with what's possible. And so I want to break this out into two pieces, right, with Alex. So I want to talk about more what you're doing with it internally, right, outside in the people or just the overall strategy. Would love to hear your thoughts on that. And then on the product side. So let's talk about big picture. And we don't need to spend the whole episode, but if you had to be succinct on where you think the whole industry of AI, when I say AI, I mean large language models, companies like OpenAI, Gemini, Copilot, all those areas, where do you think your vision of what's happening? And I'm not going to say over the next 5 years, over the next 12 to 18 months of what's going to happen in that space. I would love for you to break it down into like 3 or 4 points.
Yeah, Ryan, when I think about any change of this magnitude, I always think about the statement that we, oftentimes overestimate things in the short term, but we underestimate things in the long term. And I think this is like a perfect example of what's going on right now. I think AI is going to be, in our lifetime, one of the driving forces, just as the mobile was or the internet was, relative to change in terms of how we work, how work gets done, what we can do as society and humanity. It's massive, all of that. But, the key trigger is always the human change and how quickly people are able to adapt and actually work differently. And so as these two things kind of come together, I think there's going to be a time period of the next 12, 18 months where companies really are just trying to understand what they can do with AI, what the value is, where the value accumulates, all of this. And I can talk obviously about how we use AI internally at Optimizely and, kind of like the steps you kind of go through. But then there's going to be, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, just a completely different way of working. I mean, could you have imagined in 2005 that you would be on a plane today downloading a streaming movie, and watching it on a mobile device? No, you could have not. At that point, it was amazing that there was eBay around and Google started, et cetera. So there's so many things you just don't know about the future. But what's great is to see that there's so much new capital, so much investment, so many smart minds going into the space, and that will drive all the growth. It was no different when people put in, the towers so that we can have mobile devices, et cetera, work. You need that infrastructure investment. And obviously NVIDIA and all of that is just such a driver behind that technology progress. So I'm very, very bullish in terms of what AI will do, but I'm also a little bit more realistic in terms of what it will happen in, let's say, 12 months, because I just see human change and companies changing at a much slower rate sometimes than the technology allows you to do.
Oh, I totally agree with you on that. The technology is changing at an incredible rate. Sorry, I keep wiping my eyes or wiping my nose. I don't know if there's pollen in the air or what's going on, but my eyes keep watering like crazy. So let's talk about, and I think your insight on short-term versus long-term is so true. There's a lot of folks that I know that are executives that still don't know how to use it. So I want to break this down in a couple segments. I want to hear, how do you personally use it?
I personally use it in a couple of fashions. One, when I write something, I use it as a way to give me additional ideas in terms of shortening it, making it punchier, and I basically use it to think about ideation around words. Actually, just the other day, I went to one of my content marketers. I was working on a piece and we were looking for a catchy headline. And it was actually fun to see how she was doing it compared to how I was doing it, so you learn something. So there's a lot of reverse mentoring opportunities here for somebody
Oh yeah.
working with somebody else, So that was great. And then I played around quite a bit with Midjourney and other tools, just in terms of images and other things for blog posts that I made and other things. We oftentimes talk about in testing about hippos, which is highest paid person's opinion, but they're also obviously the animals with a really big mouth and tiny ears. And so if you need a good image of a hippo, AI can actually help you get there quickly. And then, the other part where I use AI a lot is in the tools that we use to run the company. So when it comes to forecasting the business, we use a platform that has an AI engine in it that gives me an AI forecast rather than my salespeople. That starts to change the way about how I think about things. Our own tools, when I look at our own platform, where we use AI in terms of optimizing for SEO and for other context pieces, that's done through AI today. When we run tests, we actually create multiple variants that come from our platform through AI. So we are also users of our own platform, so it goes both ways. But I personally, I probably use it the most when I think about our forecasting and then content generation.
Okay, so forecast content. And what's your tool? What's your go-to tool? Do you use like ChatGPT? You use Copilot, Gemini? What's your go-to?
Yeah, actually, we are running Copilot internally in the company. We're running a pilot actually on that across the business right now. And then OpenAI from the very early days. Yeah.
Well, basically OpenAI is under the hood of Copilot anyway. So I like it that you're running a Copilot pilot, right? That makes sense. So, okay, so then let's stick to the human capital side, and then I want to get into your product, and I want to make sure they're separate for distinct reasons. So what do you envision, or what are the use cases that you see for ChatGPT that are just blowing your mind, and Copilot specifically that your own team's using? And I would love to hear that. And if you have, what's your strategy for that you're kind of looking at?
Yeah, look, the big part is always there's in my mind, there's kind of like the efficiency and kind of like the effectiveness part. Efficiency is more around like which things can be totally automated, where you just don't need so many steps anymore. Like to take something like, for instance, an HR hotline or something, or processes where people find it difficult to get something done. There's a lot of things you can actually start automating, having Copilot and other or ChatGPT, basically do the steps for you. And obviously the solutions themselves get quicker about it. So the whole chat interfaces internally, efficiencies, all of that, I think are coming out of that. I think that's interesting and that's valuable. And I think there's a business case around that. And I think for employees, I think the experience will be just as good or maybe even better, because again, if you have an expense report to fill, maybe you just say like, oh, fill out expense report, but it does it automatically, all of those things. But I think the effectiveness is more interesting for me around how does it actually help my team produce at a higher rate better content and better materials. And I give you a very interesting case study, which is, we never have enough resources in a company. So it's less about cost takeout. It's actually more about how can I actually get more things done in a day. We go, for instance, to market by different verticals, different industries that we speak to, but we don't have enough content necessarily to talk to these different verticals. Yeah. We sent our entire marketing team onto a boot camp for a couple of days to actually work with a couple of coaches in terms of how do you actually write the right prompts to actually build out the right vertical content for your different industries. And that was super, super valuable. And you saw that the issue was not the tools necessarily. It was really around like, okay, how does the tool have enough context about our business? How do you write the right prompts? And that's the human change in there. But, the generation and the people that can start taking advantage of this, they're just going to be more productive relative to what they do. And what I just gave you as a marketing related example, the same obviously applies to engineering. The same applies to a lot of other functions. So I don't see AI as like a zero-sum game. I really see about it actually expanding everyone's capability. It is a superpower that you give people. And the superpower is not about taking things away from people. It's actually making people much better and stronger. And I think there's going to be some that are going to be superheroes, and there's going to be some that are not going to get there. Yeah,
totally agree, and I agree. I mean, from the superpower aspect, I think it helps people become superhuman. Really, if you look at it, or superheroes, I think that's another great example because, like, I don't know, man. I mean, the part you're talking about, verticalization, makes sense too, because I looked at that when it first came out, available to the masses. And it was kind of like that late October, November, early November 22 timeframe. Basically, by looking at it, I'm like, all right, I'm going to test this on something that I know to be true, just from like decades of experience, right? And literally, it got 90% of the way there in 3 questions.
yes,
not everything, right? But in terms of my understanding about how C-level executives are evaluated, compensated, and motivated, right? And so those are some of the things that I think align directly with what you're talking about.
And on the other side, Ryan, if I could just say, I think there's also an opportunity on the other side to obviously ensure that you have an authentic message. I think a lot of times when I talk to customers or marketers, others, there's obviously this question about how can you be authentic? But what's interesting is that in a world where everything has gone digital, sales of wristband watches that have mechanical clockworks are up like crazy, the same with writing instruments, etc. So I think there's also always a counter opportunity. And that's why I think the world is so rich, because it's not just one thing. And I don't think AI will eat the world completely. But I think there's going to be moments for companies to stand out. But there's going to be a lot of things that we're going to do a lot better because of AI. Yeah?
So true. Well, and I love your perspective on that. And I think it's awesome that you're investing in your people for skill acquisition on that side, because I'm a big believer of it. That's why I'm doing what I do. But like, what about on the product side? Because it sounds like, marketing is so ripe for opportunity with the consolidation, kind of like what you're doing, that marketing operating system. And so, like, what would you say is your favorite AI use case within the product that you have that delivers the biggest result for your clients?
Yeah, so our belief is that in order for companies to adopt AI, it's an interesting moment in time because, on the one hand, you can go down the route and look at startups who do new things, or you can look at vendors that already have platforms where people are doing work and think about how can you use AI to accelerate it. And I think right now, embedding AI into existing processes can gain a lot of value. And so in our platform, which is Optimized D1, which is really that entire marketer lifecycle and marketing lifecycle where people ideate and create content and test content, we created Opal. And Opal is based on, is our AI that actually takes into account where you are in the process within the marketing organization. Now, if you don't want to use our Opal, you can bring your own AI. We call it BYO AI. You can bring your own AI into our platform. And we work with all the major vendors. We have a partnership with Ryder, with others where you can bring in your own AI. But the idea where we see the biggest benefits right now, I give you 2 use cases where we have seen the greatest adoption. The first one was on the testing and experimentation side. One of the challenges most testing teams have is that they test on 2 variants, A/B, and that's why it's called A/B testing. But if you actually, look at all our research or the industry research, you see that companies who test on multiple variables actually do far better than just testing on 2. So how do we use AI in our platform? We help companies gain, see more variables, So let's say, for instance, you have a banner that says like, tune in to Ryan's podcast and you want to have 2 different options. We can now create 3 different options for you or 4 different options. And then the human is still involved, can select which ones you want to run a test on. And now you suddenly have more variants that you're testing with. It's a very simple example, but it's high value. Again, it's one of the things our customers have struggled with. And then the second piece, what we're very excited about is, being context aware when the AI knows where you are in the process. So imagine, for instance, you're starting a campaign. You are writing a brief about the campaign, why you're running this campaign. Writing a brief for a campaign can be a tedious task for a marketer. Now with Opal, you can actually say like, look, I'm writing a campaign on, in order to boost demand for our content management system. Now the AI can actually help you with the draft and is next to you in terms of actually building this out. But it understands the context of where you're in. If you're in the next step where you write a blog post in support of the campaign, it knows that you're working on the blog post. So now it gives you blog post suggestions. So really it is about this context-aware piece where I think, that will make the AI so much easier to use for people. And that's really what we are trying to solve for, is the ease of use and making it useful. Because just being useful is not enough if the ease of use is too complicated. So we are really trying to do both things in our platform. And those are two of the embedded use cases right now, Ryan, where we see most adoption. But obviously, there's no end in terms of use cases we can envision. Big enterprises come with all the concerns. They want to know, where's the LLM coming from? What data are you using for this? Can I be sued later on at one point about this? What's the legal framework? I mean, there's so many, times where people bring up all the why nots to you, that you really have to ensure that you focus on the whys and really get those right for the customer, but also understand that enterprises, especially large enterprises, have a lot of regulatory environments that they need to be adhered to. And you need to find the use cases that make it really valuable for them.
Excellent, man. I think that's a great summary. I think that's a great example and opportunities. And I love the testing because the AI is insane at pattern recognition. And so that's like a perfect use case for it. So where can people find you? Where can they find out more about Optimizely? And then we'll wrap up part 2, even though it flew by, man.
It sure did. It sure did. You can find us on optimizely.com. You can find us obviously on LinkedIn and Twitter and all the, it's called X now, on all the platforms that are popular. And you can find me on LinkedIn at Alex Atzberger. Happy to connect.
Excellent, Alex. Well, thanks for being on the show again for part 2, and look forward to seeing you, man. Maybe we'll have you back when you hit $1 billion, in revenue, just a low number like that. And we'll have a little celebration for you, man.
Just a couple of years, man. Give me a couple of years.
Cheers. All right, have a good one. And thank you for joining me today. We will see you on the next episode.